All right, so section 8.1, part 1. All right, this is on displacement versus distance and velocity versus speed. Okay, we've touched on this lightly, but this is a major thing on the AP test, so we really do need to talk about this more. Okay, so distance is a scalar measure of the interval between two locations measured along the actual path connecting them. All right, so distance would be, you know, if I sent my cross-country runners out 3 miles and then back 3 miles, the total distance they went was 6 miles. Displacement is a vector measure of the interval between the two locations measured along the shortest path connecting them. All right, so displacement is how much you've changed from those two locations. So if they go out 3 miles and come back to the school, their starting spot, their displacement is 0. Does this make sense? So this is a big, this is very important on the AP test. Okay, so basically the distance is adding up the absolute value of the velocity from point A to B. And displacement is just velocity from point A to B, so adding up all of them. Okay, so distance is absolute value. Think of the 3 miles out, negative 3 miles back. 3 plus 3 is 6, right? Okay, so if an object moves along a straight line with velocity v of t equals t cubed plus 3t squared, find the distance traveled between t equals 1 and t equals 4. Okay, so distance, you're going to have to do the absolute value. So distance is going to be from 1 to 4, the absolute value of t cubed plus 3t squared dt. Okay. All right, so basically on your, if you graphed t cubed plus 3t squared, here's what it looks like. So at 0, 0, it hits and then it pops back up. Okay, so does the absolute value actually matter in this case? No, because if you're going from 1 to 4, that's all positive anyway. So you can actually compute this without the absolute value. Okay, so you can just compute 1 to 4 t cubed plus 3t squared dt. All right, you can go through that. So you get t to the 5th with 1/5 out front plus t cubed. Oh, t to the 4th. Sorry, I thought I was looking at the other 4. I promise I know how to integrate. All right. Allie, you always get the bonus points in this class. You're quick. All right, so then plug in 4. Mm-hmm. So plugging in 4, I get 128. Plugging in 1, I get 4. So 124. Okay, that's a distance. So if we actually had units, it'd be something like meters, feet, miles, something like that. We don't have units in this example, though. All right, now question. If this was on the calculator portion, could I put it in just like this? Oh, wait, just like the one above it. Could I put that into my calculator with the absolute values? Yeah. Do you guys know where absolute values are? Yeah, so you're going to hit Math 9. That will pull up the FN int, definite integral. And then we hit Math, arrow over to number, and it's 1. That's the absolute value. So you could put it in that way as well.
How do you get 4 out of 1?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I did there. 5/4?
Yeah.
Yeah. I put it in my table. I must not have had the function incorrect. So 126.75 should be the answer. All right, so next up. All right, so a particle moves along the x-axis with velocity 6t squared minus 18t plus 12. All right, so imagine, think of I always had to do this on my AP tests. I had to think about if I'm graphing velocity and times along here. So velocity. You don't have to draw this, but think about the units. Guys, stop talking. Think about what this rectangle would be. If I had like seconds and velocity was meters per second, what's the area of the rectangle? What units would it be in? Not a hard question.
Per second squared?
It'd be meters per second times seconds. It's just meters. Okay, that's why we're getting distance out when we integrate velocity. Does that make sense? Okay. So this next one, so we have find the total distance covered between 0 and 4. So let's go ahead and graph 6t squared and see what it looks like. All right, so we have this. This one does dip below the axis. So we're computing the distance between 0 and going to 4. Remember, distance is the positive. So basically, like your velocity was positive until a certain point, and then your velocity was negative. So that means you turned around and went in the opposite direction. So we're going to add the absolute value of that. So it flips it over the axis and makes it positive. And then we're going to go to here. Okay, so the absolute value function would be graphed like this. That part that dips below would really go up. So it would look like a shape like that. That's what we're finding, the area. Okay, so again, that's just the absolute value of 6t squared minus 18t plus 12, going from 0 to 4. Okay, I already put that into my y1, so I'm just going to do math 9. I want to hit my absolute value, so I'm going to do math, arrow over to number, absolute value. I want to pull up y1, so I'm going to do vars, y-vars function, y1. Do you guys remember how to find all these things? Parenthesis to say that all of that has the absolute value around it, comma, x, comma, 0, comma, 4. Okay, when I do that, I get 34. Okay, if this was not a calculator portion, though, how would you do it without a calculator? It says what?
Get the answers by hand and verify.
Oh, okay. That's okay. So if we don't have a calculator, how do we do it? Plug what in though? Nope. You can't just. I mean, this one goes below the axis. You can't just plug in 0 and 4 and get the right answer out. So you have to find where it goes below the axis. So how do I find where it goes below the axis? So this is my original. So I have 6t squared minus 18t plus 12. I want to find when it equals 0. I want to find these two x values where it's crossing the axis. So pull out a common factor. Factor. So you get 6 times t minus, ooh, does this factor? No. Yeah, so we need to do a quadratic formula. So negative b plus or minus b squared plus 2. I'm struggling today. I'm not going to post this video. Okay, I was like, why did I do one that doesn't factor? All right, so 6t minus 2, t minus 1 equals 0. So I get t equals 2 and t equals 1. Okay, so that means at these two locations, this is at 1 and this is at 2. So that means I could compute from 0 to 1 of v of t. And then I could add on from 2 to 4 of v of t, my original velocity. What about from 1 to 2? What? What'd you say? You flip it. What does that mean by flip it? All the y values that were down here now became the opposite y values, right? They flipped up here. So it's the negative v of t. So it's going to be negative v of t dt from 1 to 2. So you'd have to compute it that way. So it wouldn't be very fun. It's a lot of integrating. Yeah, you can pull the negative out to the front, yeah.
So you figure out, like,
absolute value will be by factoring the equation.
Yep, you figured out that it was below the axis from here to here.
Right here.
So you flip it over by making it negative, and then you go from 1 to 2 on those, yeah, by factoring. Okay, so find the displacement of the particle from 0 to 4. Okay, displacement is the one that's easy. It doesn't matter. You're just trying to find the total from 0 to 4. You're not trying to find the absolute value at all. You're finding the total vector change, basically. So you're going from 0 to 4 of your original, just v of t dt. Okay, so I get t cubed with a 2 out front minus t squared with a 9 out front plus 12t going from 0 to 4. So 32 minus 0 is 32. So 32 would be your answer. Okay, so for the following problems, the velocity is given. Find the distance and displacement for the given time interval. So you're going to try both of these. So the first one says no calculator, so do it by hand. The next one says calculators allowed. So find both the distance and the displacement. Okay, so the first one was no calculator. All right, so that means you kind of need to know what the graph looks like. So if you have t squared plus t minus 6, I know it's a parabola. If I want to find if it crosses the axis, set it equal to 0 and factor. It works out to be t minus 2 times t plus 3. So at negative 2 and at positive 2 and at negative 3, you're crossing the axis. Okay, so your parabola it's upwards, right? Because t squared is positive. Okay, so you're finding from 0 to 3. So that means this portion of the curve that was below the axis, you want to flip it above the axis. So you're really doing this. So this area right here. And then from 0 to 3. So like that. Does that make sense? So your distance is going to be the opposite of v of t from 0 to 2 plus just plain v of t from 2 to 3. Okay, did you guys find that out? Okay. You haven't finished? Okay. So it's going to be the opposite. So you're going to have negative t squared minus t plus 6 dt from 0 to 2 plus t squared plus t minus 6 dt. So negative 1/3 t cubed minus 1/2 t squared plus 6t 0 to 2. Should have given you more room for this calculator one, huh? So t cubed.
It's plus t minus 6. The equation.
Okay, because this was a minus on the first one. Okay, so what'd you get for the first one? Did you guys know? From 0 to 2. Did you guys do that part? 48 over 3. Did anybody else get that number?
38 over 3.
38 over 3.
I don't
Okay.
know if that's right.
Clearly I'm going to have to do it. Oh man. So negative 1/3 times 8 minus 1/2 times 4 plus 12. Yeah, 22/3. And then plus the second part. Oh, 17/6. Okay, so 22/3 plus 17/6. 61/6? Did anybody else get that answer? All right, 61/6 is what we're looking for. All right, what'd you guys get for displacement? So displacement was the easier one because you just go with v of t from 0 to 3 dt. Why is it nice to write it this way first on your test, on your AP exam? So with the v of t in there. You get a point for just having the setup correct. So if you guys wrote it incorrectly and you wrote from 0 to 3, and then you wrote t squared minus t minus 6 dt, and you had left this part off, then you would miss points for the setup because you wrote the function wrong. So be careful. So plus t minus 6. Okay, what did you guys get for this one? What? Didn't get that far? It's not very speedy. 1/3 t cubed plus 1/2 t squared minus 16. I think you get negative 4.5. So negative 9/2. Okay, and that should make sense graphically because you had more negative area than positive area, right? I'm saying area loosely. All right, so this next one's calculators allowed, thank goodness. So on this first one, if you're finding the distance, remember distance is absolute value of your velocity from 0 to 3. Displacement is no absolute value. All right, so you're going to do math 9. Make sure you do absolute value. So you're going to hit math, arrow over to number, and then it's the first choice. Make sure you put a parenthesis to end your absolute value. I got my distance was 48.9375, so 938. And then the next one, just do second enter, right? So you can remove your absolute values. Hit delete for your absolute value. Make sure you delete that other parenthesis as well. So displacement is 36. Did you guys get those numbers? You got the 48 one. So see what I'm saying with second enter, it pulls up that last entry and you can edit. You need, you don't really, no. Yeah, you don't need to. All right. So we'll skip 5 and 6, so let's go on to speed and velocity. All right, so speed is the rate of change of distance with time. Velocity is the rate of change of displacement with time. So therefore, since speed is related to distance and velocity is related to displacement, speed is always positive. Velocity can be positive or negative. It indicates the direction. So that's the most important thing. Okay, they always, always, always talk about the speed of something on the AP test, which is very confusing because they are not talking about the velocity. They're talking about the absolute value of the velocity, right? All right, they could also say something like, is the speed increasing or decreasing? That gets very confusing as well. So we're going to talk about this. Okay, so 7. A particle moves along a line in such a way that at time t, its position is given by this crazy function. Okay, write a formula that expresses the velocity of the object at time t. So how's velocity related to position, s of t? It's a derivative. So how do I take the derivative of that integral? I can't see what this is. Can you guys see on your, is that a t? Yeah, that's a t. This is a t on your page. So how do you take the derivative if you have a variable right there? You just plug it in, right? So you're going to have 1 minus t times cosine of t minus natural log of t times sine of t. If it had been t squared, you'd multiply that entire thing by 2t, the derivative of whatever it was. Okay, that's the velocity. It says, at what instance does the particle reach its maximum speed? So you're going to say that the speed is the absolute value of the velocity. Don't write speed as s of t. That's already been taken, right? So speed is the absolute value of the velocity. We're trying to maximize it. This is a calculator question, so how can I do this with my calculator? So we can put in absolute value into our y1, right? Of 1 minus x cosine of x minus natural log of x sine of x. And you can graph it with the absolute values already there. That makes it really easy. If you left off the absolute values and you tried to maximize, that's okay. You could find the maximum, but you also need to find the minimum values, right? And then think about which value is a larger quantity. Do you guys see what I'm saying? A lot of you guys don't look like you're paying attention. What did I just say? If you don't have the absolute values, so if this was a question without a calculator and you had to graph it, you would find not only the maximum values, but you'd find the maximum and the minimum values. Since you're talking about the absolute value, you just find what those numbers are, so they're y values, find which one has the greater quantity. So if you had -5 for one of the y values and only +4 for the other one, which one's the maximum speed? The 5 one, right? So you have to think about which one's bigger. Okay. So when I graph it, I get something. I went ahead and graphed it with the absolute value in it. I get something that looks like this. And so on. We're going from 1 to 8, so you can change your window from 1 to 8 for your x's. So when I do that, I only see the first 2 bumps. So I see, oops, I see that much. Do you guys see that much? Okay, it looks like the maximum, the highest one, is right here. So we're going to find that. So we're going to do second trace maximum. So get on the left of that maximum, get on the right. What? I put the absolute value of what we just found. So I put absolute value 1 minus x cosine of x, like that. That's what I put in. Is that what you tried to put in? That's okay. All right, so when you do that, I get 6.700, 5.896. That's the point. So when it says at what instant, what are they asking for? Time t. So at t equals 6.700. Okay, when is the particle moving to the left? All right, this is a little bit harder. So go back to your y equals, and let's get rid of the absolute values. So delete the absolute value. You might have to delete that last parenthesis if you guys had a closer. And when you see this, now it looks like that part that was originally up higher is now down below. Okay. Positive is right. Negative is left. So it's between here and 8. Okay, so we need to find that value. So second trace, now we're going to find the 0. Get on the left of what we're trying to find. On the right of what we're trying to find. Guess. That 0 is 5.204. So you'd say from time 5.204 to 8. Usually it'd say like seconds or minutes or something, but I think ours doesn't. Okay, and the last one, find the total distance traveled from t equals 1. Oh, it's not the last one. T equals 1 to t equals 8. So that'd be the absolute value of the velocity, dt. So let's go back to our y1 and put in the absolute value again. So do second insert, absolute value. So since that's already in my y1, I'm going to put in fn int y1, comma x, comma 1, comma 8. You could have also done absolute value of y1, right, if you'd left off the absolute value. All right, so math 9, vars, y vars, function, y1, x, comma 1, comma 8. Mine's thinking a lot. Is yours thinking? I didn't think too much. What'd you get? Okay. We have different numbers. 21 point what?
I had 21.461.
461. And you had what?
47.41.
Mine's still thinking.
It's probably 21. 46.
You have 41 something?
21.461.
Okay, so the 461 is what we think. 21.461. Oh, that's what mine came up to. So that's it. Yep. Okay, so you guys can start on your homework tonight. I would definitely start on it. It takes a while.